Dear friends, I think I have spoken on the subject of Pragyaparadh before, the mistake of the intellect, and also how thought creates the biggest illusion that ultimately leads to what we call human suffering. So let me explore this in more detail with you now and see if we get somewhere in our deeper understanding of reality. So Pragyaparadh is translated in English as the mistake of the intellect. And it refers to a fundamental error in perception and understanding that arises when the intellect becomes disconnected from the wholeness of consciousness. So in this state, the intellect, influenced by sensory fluctuations and the superstition of matter, creates a false sense of separation between the subject and the object, the observer and the observed. This misperception leads to the illusion that the body-mind complex or the individual person is the true subject of experience, rather than recognizing that that which we call a person with a body-mind complex is actually an object within the broader field of consciousness. So in the Vedic understanding, consciousness, Purusha, is considered the ultimate reality and witness, while the body-mind, which is the person, Prakriti, is seen as a dynamic process of manifestation within this consciousness. The mistake of the intellect occurs when one identifies with the body-mind as I or I am, rather than understanding it as a temporary modification or fluctuation of the self experiencing itself. This misidentification perpetuates duality, what is called the subject-object split, where one views oneself as separate from others and the world. So you could also call it the mistake of thought, because it is thought that divides subject and object. And this artificial division has profound implications in both spiritual and practical contexts. Spiritually, it obscures one's realization of unity with Brahman or pure consciousness. And practically, it leads to imbalances in thought and behavior, which Ayurveda attributes as a root cause of disease and suffering. So, to overcome Pragyaparadh, one must cultivate a steady intellect, which is referred to as Sthita Pragya. Sthita Prajna. This state is likened to a lamp in a windless place, steady, undisturbed, and fully integrated with universal consciousness. But now let's go a little bit further. Since we are stuck with the experience that we call a person, and since the person is an illusion, is there a way of upgrading the experience of this process, of this illusion that we call a person? So, yes, one can integrate spiritual practices that refine awareness and transcend identification with the body-mind, while still embracing the human experience as a manifestation of consciousness. Of course, these techniques include Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, and self-inquiry, which is also called Atma Vichar. And these practices help to dissolve the identification with the ego by directing attention to the true self, Atman, and even by engaging in this question, who am I? What am I? Meditating on the nature of consciousness, one can realize that the person is merely an appearance within awareness and not its essence. And then mindful engagement with Maya or the illusion. This means while still recognizing that Maya creates the perception of multiplicity, one can consciously engage with life's experiences without attachment. This involves understanding that all phenomena are expressions of Brahman, the ultimate reality, and treating them as sacred play, Leela, rather than clinging to them as independent reality. But here's the best experience you can cultivate, and that is living as a jivan mukta. A jivan mukta is someone who is liberated while still living in the body. This state involves functioning in the world without egoic attachment, seeing oneself not as a separate individual, but as a process through which consciousness expresses itself. And this allows one to fully experience life without getting trapped by illusions. Allows us to fully experience life while remaining free from its binding concepts. And of course, when we engage in selfless service, seva, it fosters an expanded sense of identity by dissolving the ego's boundaries and seeing others as extensions of oneself aligns with the realization that all beings are manifestation of the same consciousness. So when we integrate knowledge with devotion, which means combining intellectual understanding, jnana, with devotion, which I would say is love, by doing that, combining knowledge and devotion, bhakti, we can balance detachment with love for life and recognize that all forms are Brahman, and then appreciate life's beauty while remaining unattached to its illusions, so that one can live fully in the illusion of personhood while remaining free from its conceptual limitations and experiencing life as a harmonious interplay with the source, universal consciousness. This is my latest book, Digital Dharma, How AI Can Elevate Spiritual Intelligence and Personal Well-Being. And please engage with my digital twin to continue these conversations. Chopra.ai. Thank you, friends.